Today, we're going to be checking out the reissue of the Zakk Wylde Overdrive from MXR. So to celebrate Zakk Wylde working with MXR and Dunlop for the past 2 decades, 20 years, they decided to reissue his signature guitar pedals. Now, this is pretty special to me. I've had, his old Overdrive on the channel before. I talked about how that was the first Overdrive I'd ever bought when I was a young guitar player, and I didn't know what to do with it. I thought it was supposed to be more like a distortion. I was wondering why it didn't immediately make me sound like Zakk Wylde. I didn't realize he was, using it to boost the front end of his JCM 800 to get that big tone of his. But I know now. Back in the day, I'd even had one of the original white ones on the channel just to kind of go down that nostalgia road and, show off how it was still a pretty solid Overdrive, and I kind of wish it would come back, and here it is. And I think this one actually looks way cooler. I like the kind of silver, metal aluminum looking case with just the plain black bullseye. I think that looks really cool. But his other pedals have also gotten a bit of a facelift, so there is now a 20th anniversary version of the Phaser and the Chorus. I didn't pick up either of those because I already have a Phase 95 from MXR, so don't need that. And while I did own his Black Label Chorus for a really long time, and that was one of my absolute favorite chorus sounds for clean, I don't have a use for it now, but I'm always down for another Overdrive. And like I said, it was kind of special to me just because his original Overdrive was my very first Overdrive, the very first in many of a very crippling Overdrive at Gain Addiction. I believe they said they're also going to be reissuing his Dunlop Roto Vibe and his Dunlop Crybaby. That's pretty cool. I actually really like his Crybaby. I have one. I bought one used just because I was constantly chasing that wah sound. While I'm not a massive wah guy personally, there are times when I absolutely need it and I want it to sound just right. And I'd had one years and years ago when I was younger, around the same time when I had the Overdrive. I always thought that was absolutely just the best wah sound. And after going through a bunch of them, I finally just decided to buy another used Zakk Wylde one. And lo and behold, for me, perfect wah sound. So it's really cool they're re-releasing it. I'll probably buy a new one just to make sure I have one on hand so my old used one doesn't wear out or something. So just like the original, it's just a dead simple Overdrive. You have volume, gain, and tone. More volume hits the amp harder. You can add some gain to add some grit if you don't want it so dry. And then of course the tone knob, how dark or how bright it is, essentially how cutting and aggressive it is. Super simple. So that's enough about me kind of going down memory lane and talking about all the cool anniversary editions of his pedals coming out. Let's actually hear this inside and outside of a mix. Now, unfortunately, very much unfortunately, I don't have a JCM 800, but I do have my Freeman BEOD 50 Deluxe. So we're gonna have this going into the BE channel of that to get some good Overdrive, and then we'll hear it outside of a mix on that same channel. We'll also just hear it as a regular Overdrive going to the clean channel, just so you can hear, how it is as a standalone regular Overdrive. And for both the in and out of mix, it's going to be going into my 2-Notes Captor X with a DV77 and VM1265 IR blend. And I'm going to be playing and plugging into this thing for both the in and out of mix with my Fuji Gen Neo Classic, and very recently I have loaded the Mojotone Hellbender Bill Kelleher signature pickups into that thing, finally making it the proper fire breather I always wanted it to be. So that's absolutely enough talking. Let's actually just hear this thing. So that was my best attempt at something Zakk Wylde-ish. The wah stuff for that lead guitar there was his wah. I was just trying to kind of capture his essence. And, I grew up loving Zakk Wylde. I still love Zakk Wylde. I love his riffs, his lead work. I think he's a cool dude. Love Black Label. If you have the chance, check out Zakk Sabbath, especially Doomed Forever, Forever Doomed. He just put that double album out this year. And it's just a couple of the best Sabbath albums redone in kind of a modern way with Zakk Wylde's take on stuff, and it's really good. Would definitely recommend. What's cool is more than just nostalgia, it's still a good Overdrive. It still sounds good. It's less thin than, say, like a Boss SD1, which is what he was using before this. And he even talked in an interview recently doing a rig rundown for Pantera that he essentially wanted something like the SD1 to hit the front of his amps with, his JCM 800s, but he didn't want the bottom to fall out. He wanted something with a little bit more chunk, a little bit more girth, and this will definitely do that. While it definitely tightens things up, and you can get dry with how hard you're hitting the front end of the amp or how much gain you're hitting it with from the pedal. It definitely stays chunky. Those palm mutes still feel nice and full on. It doesn't get nice and thin or too thin. And I know exactly what he's talking about with the SD1, because while I like the SD1, I always feel like it gets too thin. Like, always feel like it gets a little bit too thin. So I definitely would prefer, say, this to that. So I'm going to have a link up if you want to check out any of his 20th anniversary pedals. Hope you dug the track. Hope this might have been nostalgic for some of you guys too. I'm sure some of his pedals and his overdrive were floating around when you guys were just starting out, or even if you'd been around for a while, you just remember them over the past, 20 years. But thanks for watching. Stay metal.